American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tellustrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
From our sponsor, Coach Paint. Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast brought to you by Coach Paint. Today is May 2nd, 2021. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, joined by my co-host, Robert Parker, and our guest, Jeremy Kohlman from the Extra Point, here to break down the AFC North, give you our thoughts on each pick along with the grade for each team. Jeremy is a world-renowned Pittsburgh Steelers fan, in case you couldn't tell by looking at him. Like, it's just pretty obvious, right? He just oozes Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, it's pretty obvious, right? But he'll give an objective opinion on the rest of the division. But we'll save Pittsburgh. We'll save the best for last there for you, Jeremy. We'll start out with your second favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens here. And I got to say, the Ravens, I loved their first round picks here. They went with Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota at receiver. Gives that ability to stretch the field that they're really lacking. I know they've had guys who can run, but they not the guys that could do something at all phases of the field. Bateman's that receiver, that do-it-all receiver. They've been missing Jason Owa, the edge rusher out of Penn State. A lot of development still with him, but he at least is worth that development. In Baltimore, we know they tend to develop those type of guys in Baltimore. In round 3, they pick up Ben Cleveland from Georgia, which if you followed the SEC the last several years, just a real solid, dependable player. Great. Yeah, just typical Baltimore Raven. Just he's going to show up and get the job done for you. Brandon Stevens, corner out of SMU, another third-round pick. Tylan Wallace, speedster, Oklahoma State. More action in that receiver room for Baltimore. Sean Wade, at one point a couple of years ago, a year or two ago, was projected as a first-round pick, falls all the way to the 5th after not a great 2020. Dalen Hayes out of Notre Dame, coming off the edge, another solid pickup. And honestly, fellas, I know it's the 5th round. I know he's not much of a receiver, but just in terms of pure football, just like Jeremy oozes Pittsburgh Steelers, this man oozes football. Ben Mason, fullback / tight end / whatever the hell you want him to be, because the man is a football player out of Michigan. I was dying for the Jags to pick this guy late. This is like a perfect late round pickup. He's going to have physical presence, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play more football at the next level here. All in all, guys, I like the draft. I think you're taking some swings. I mean, I like Tylan Wallace. I like Sean Wade in the middle. This really solid draft from top to bottom here. I'm going to go A- for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a more of a B. And I'll tell you why here. Rashad Bateman is someone who I think really Baltimore just home run pick there. He really fits what they've needed. They've really needed a guy who can potentially be a number one on the outside. They've had a few slot guys here and there. They've had a few big guys here and there, but this guy legitimately could be a number one. He's got all the tools to be a number one. Love that pick. And then to follow it up with Odafe Owe, just athletic freak. He really has to develop though. He played in 2020, didn't have a single sack. I mean, how are you a pass rusher and don't have a single sack? That's mind blowing for me personally. But athletic freak. I mean, he's like 6'6", 260, ran a 4.4 at that size. I mean, The funny thing is he's still really skinny for his size. Like, he could still even fill it even more and probably be even better. Ben Cleveland's a really solid pickup in the third round out of Georgia. He's just this big, nasty offensive lineman that, Baltimore loves these types of guys. He actually tested way more athletic than I think a lot of people anticipated him testing. He ran like a 4.8, and then people were just like, we were expecting more like a 5.4. So just plus that he's more athletic than people thought he was. Brandon Stevens, didn't really know much about Brandon Stevens until I looked him up after the draft, to be honest. He was not a name that someone of who I really watched, but he's a solid player. He's got some athleticism. He can turn and run. He can cover. So, that's a nice.
Was he the guy that transferred to SMU and switched positions? At corner?
Yeah.
Rob, if you know,
so he's a converted running back.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he wasn't.
UCLA.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why he wasn't on my radar probably, to begin the year, just because he's 6 feet tall, but 213 pounds. He's got some, not typical size for a cornerback, but, he tested really well. 2-year starter at SMU. So he's got some pass breakups. So that might be a nice little steal they find there in the third round. Really like Tylan Wallace. Was honestly surprised he fell this far for as polished as he is. He can do pretty much anything you ask him to. So I was a little surprised he fell this far. I think it's because he doesn't necessarily play the fastest. I know he timed well, but he doesn't play the fastest. Shaun Wade, at this point in the draft, I really don't have an issue with this pick. He's a talented guy, had a bad year. His stock suffered because of it. Before this year, people were talking him up as the next potential first round corner out of Ohio State. And, he really struggled. But honestly, I think his future is at safety. I really think he could be a nice safety who comes down and plays the run, but doesn't get beat over top. Dalen Hayes, talk about a guy who really jumped all over the place initially and found a home at Notre Dame. Really good character guy. Just needs to be more consistent than anything. But he's got a chance to be a good pass rusher for them. They tend to find good pass rushers, in this range. And then, like you said, Ben Mason, football player extraordinaire. And they're a team that uses a fullback too. They are a guy that uses a fullbacker to go out and lead block. So this is a good scheme fit for him too. Nice little fit for, a guy who doesn't fit a lot of schemes anymore. You see less and less of the fullback. But the funny thing is, the teams that use the fullback, funny enough, are oddly the ones that find themselves in the playoffs a lot of the time. So good fit for him. Solid B for Baltimore. Just because I didn't feel like after trading Orlando Brown, they didn't find another tackle. And then they've got some issues on the pivot too at center. And
didn't they have a guy there sliding in that they like though at right tackle? I think they have a guy already on the roster that they are projecting to start there. But I see your point, Jeremy. You make some good points there across the board. Rob, you saw a guy like Shaun Wade. He was really hyped up going into this past year, and he was critical. I mean, his father was one of the ones that really pushed the Big Ten office from the parental side to play last year, and he had originally opted out, came right back to play, so good for him for playing, but messed up off season, and he makes a position change. He switches from more of a nickel corner to outside. Jeremy referenced it with potential safety, but you think he'll slide back inside and really be more at home in the NFL level?
Yeah, I think just like Jeremy mentioned, I think his home is at safety. He tried to kind of, go the corner route this past year. It didn't fare well for him. He got beat, over the top. He got beat underneath. But I really think he can catch a home at safety. But once again, I know the Baltimore Ravens moved on from Ozzie Newsome as being the general manager, but it just seems like they get it right year in and year out. They just have a solid draft no matter what. And I give them a solid B+ in this particular draft. They go out and they get Rashad Bateman, that true number one receiver that's going to help Lamar Jackson, develop as a passer. We know Lamar Jackson, he's an athlete. We know what he can do. He won the MVP, but he needs to develop as a passer to throw outside of the hashes if, the Baltimore Ravens wants to win another Super Bowl. So they went out and they got Rashad Bateman, and then they go out and they get Penn State, Jason Owe. I know the change of name, but his mom will call him Jason. I'm gonna call him Jason type of thing. But he's a raw talent. His pro day, he went out and he performed. It seemed like everyone that Penn State team went out and had a great pro day, and he was one of those guys. And then Ben Cleveland, I think you can kind of move him around. I don't think he has a future at tackle in the NFL, but he maybe center, maybe you move around on the left guard, right guard, but he's going to be a solid acquisition on that team. And I think one of the steals that the Baltimore Ravens picked up is Tylan Wallace. Just like you said, Jeremy, he doesn't test well. He didn't test really, really well like those other slot guys, but he's just a playmaker. He's a baller. He makes those contested catches. He can take the top off the defense. He does run the route tree. You can work him in the screen game. He's just a solid, competitive, tough guy. And I really love this draft for the Baltimore Ravens. And then you add Shaun Wade, which I saw him dropping throughout the process, and I was like, he might be able to go undrafted. Just think of if he would have went undrafted, and I thought that's where he was heading because of his play last year. But Baltimore Ravens pick him up, and they always like those versatile type guys in the secondary, and I think he will catch a home with the Baltimore Ravens. And Ben Mason, just like you said, he's one of those guys that's gonna play anywhere, no matter where, because he's just a football player. So I really like this draft for the Baltimore Ravens. Solid draft. I give it a B+.
All right, let's move on to Cincinnati. You saw Jamar Chase get reunited with Joe Burrow, and the all-time meme going around before the draft was the little chart with between Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase, and they had what happens if the Bengals draft Penei Sewell. They have the little stick figure lineman blocking for Burrow, and Burrow completing a pass over the top. And what happens if they draft Jamar Chase? Burrow getting sacked while Jamar Chase is wide open downfield. So the Bengals also debuted some new uniforms and this past few weeks ago here, and Joe Burrow wore the all whites. Someone changed that on Photoshop to show it all grass stained and everything. So still some division in Cincinnati about that first round pick, but I gotta tell you, Jamar Chase is I don't think there's an issue with that pick at all for me. You did see them address the tackle position later in the draft as well with their second pick in Jackson Carman out of Clemson. That's a guy that I've heard might slide inside, though, at the next level here. But still addressing the offensive line, Joseph Osai out of Texas on the edge in the third round, grabbing 3 fourth-round picks here. Cam Sample off the edge of Tulane. Tulane had those 2 edge rushers in Patrick Johnson and Cam Sample this year, but Sample goes in the 4th to Cincinnati. Tyler Shelvin, nose tackle out of LSU, and Dante Smith, a big tackle out of East Carolina. East Carolina hasn't been pumping out the NFL talent lately, but he's a good one coming out of ECU. They go for a kicker in the 5th with Evan McPherson. I have a feeling Jeremy might throw up on that, but he is awesome kicker. He's a great kicker. And so they got a good one, even though it was in the 5th. Center Trey Hill out of Georgia in the 6th. Good pickup. Rolling the dice with Chris Evans, playmaker. Had trouble staying on the field at Michigan. And wrapping up with Wyatt Hubert out of Kansas State. Overall, I'm going to save my grade here for the end, but go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, this draft will be judged on whether Penei Sewell is an all-time pro or whether Jamar Chase is an all-time pro. That's what people are going to remember about this draft. Personally, if it was me, I would have gone Penei Sewell. I understand there's depth at at left tackle in this draft. I understand there's depth at wide receiver in this draft. I think you missed out on a chance for a generational type of talent at left tackle. There are great wide receivers that come out every year, that light the league on fire. But I'm not going to knock it because I do believe in this Jamar Chase to Burrow connection. It was special 2 years ago when LSU went on their championship run, and they wanted a dominant third receiver. They want to play three wides and a tight end and a running back. And getting a guy like Jamar Chase who can do everything as a true number one and pairing him with, T. Higgins, who I was super high on last year, and then Tyler Boyd, who is just consistent and can be dominant at times in the slot. It made a lot of sense. Like you said, I have Jackson Carman sliding inside in the NFL. That tells me that they are firm believers that Jonah Williams is and will be and can be a left tackle in the NFL. That's another reason why
2019, right? Or 2018, first round pick out of Alabama at left tackle. Another reason.
Yeah, so that's another reason they go with Jamar Chase because they see him sticking left tackle. So you kind of saw the Bengals' plans unfold there. That they were happy, didn't have to take that left tackle because they feel like they have one. But Carman could be an all-pro, in my opinion, inside. There are just a few little technical nuances that if he can clean up, he could even stay at left tackle, I think, in the NFL if he could just clean up some issues in pass protection and some foot issues. But I'm really high opinion on him. Love the Joseph Osai pick. It's a steal that a guy this talented and athletic falls all the way to the third round. His biggest issue is he doesn't have moves, but I've said it before. A lot of guys coming out of college, when they're good at one thing, they stick with the one thing. When you get to the NFL, that's when you can work with your coaches on developing all those other moves and stuff. Because his biggest thing is he needs to learn how to get off blocks more consistently and then throw counter moves and just develop other moves. Other than that, he is a total freak at like 6'4", almost 260. He is athletic as they come, which is just great. I love Cameron Sample too. He was a guy, honestly, I was very high on because I think he can. One, I think he'll stay at defensive end, but two, he can go into the nickel situations and rush from the interior. And that's just such a valuable trait for these NFL teams to have defensive ends that can kick into nickel and really give offensive guards fits with their quickness. Really like the Cameron Simple pick. Tyler Shelvin, talk about another fantastic pickup here. Big nose tackle. He's like 350 pounds at 6'2". He's more of your, honestly, traditional two-gap, nose tackle. But, this is a guy who you don't run on this guy. He opted out this year. Him and DJ Reader, that's going to be a formidable inside, if you ask me. That's going to be a very tough team to run on. Love Deontay Smith out of ECU. His biggest knock on him was that he's a great technician, but he's just not that strong or big yet. But then I was reading something how he's already put on like 20 solid pounds since the Senior Bowl. So it's like, if that's the case, he's already weighing close to 310. That could be the needed size he needed. He is a great technician, very athletic guy. He's another guy that I think can play all five spots, actually. He's going to be the best on the interior, though, at guard. Could even surprise as a center, actually. But then I know you said that I'd rip this pick, but I actually love this pick because kickers make points and win football games. If you see that there's a great talent like an Evan McPherson out there and you want to draft him in the 5th round, especially with all the issues Cincinnati has had over the last 2 or 3 years with kickers, go. I have no problem with them going and grabbing a good, solid kicker here. How many games did they potentially lose because of just bad special teams play and field goals getting missed? It's just oh my God, they could have been in a lot more games with that. So he's a special talent. Getting Trey Hill in the 6th round is another fantastic pick. He's got some issues in pass pro, but they can be worked on. He's just got to get quicker, got to get his hands up faster. Chris Evans is an Indianapolis kid. I've known him since he was at Ben Davis High School here. Very good player. The rumor is that he and Harbaugh didn't see eye to eye, butted heads, and it's you wonder why he never saw the field. They didn't see eye to eye. He's a very talented kid, though. He could very well kind of be that next Gio Bernard type of back. Honestly, I profiled him more as a receiver than true runner. So could be your nice little Swiss Army knife there. And then Wyatt Hubert, just another pure football player. Doesn't have the length you want, but he's 6'5", runs 250 something. Hustle, hustle, hustle. That's all that kid knows how to do. He's the type of guy you love to have on your team as your fourth, fifth pass rusher. Just phenomenal draft, in my opinion. A across the board.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit lower than the A, but then that's really because what you said earlier. It's going to be the Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase career, what they do between the career. But once again, you have a Jamar Chase right there in your laps. You kind of have to take them. I know the offensive line is not the sexy, splashy pick, but, it's kind of the certain pick. But once again, just having, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase hook up again, I think that will be pivotal moving forward. And not only that, it gets a chance to move Tyler Boyd in the slot, where that's pretty much where his home is. And you can kind of have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the outside. So I love this pick. Jamar Chase is your number one receiver. He can run the route tree. He can beat you top. He can beat you over the top. He can beat you short. So I really love the pick. And then just getting Joseph Asai in the third round, I think, just like you said, he's raw at the moment, but he beats you with his speed. So he's a great pass rusher that you kind of need. So just getting him in the third round is a great pick. And you got Tyler Shevin to kind of beef up that, middle. And Evan McPherson, just like you said, we've seen, not only the Cincinnati Bengals struggle with special teams, but, I'm a Vikings fan. We've struggled with, field goal kickers. The Chicago Bears have struggled with field goal kickers. So we've seen, the last couple of seasons where, these teams are winning and losing games because of their field goal kicker. And I tell you what, the only kick that I've seen Evan McPherson miss is probably a 50-plus yarder against LSU in the fog. So I tell you what, he's pretty much automatic. So to kind of get him in the fifth round is, I don't want to say it's a steal, but it's definitely better than drafting a long snapper. I tell you that. But the Cincinnati Bengals just have had a solid draft, and they can kind of build around Joe Burrow. And, in the next couple years, they can kind of, go on the defense side of the ball with the draft. But I tell you what, I really think, the pick with, the Michigan running back, I know he hasn't played a lot, and that was good that you brought that up, Jeremy, that him and Harbaugh just didn't see eye to eye. But, everyone knows Joe Mixon. He gets nicked up year in and year out. So he can kind of be a Giovanni Bernard, change of pace back, go out the backfield and receive, and also, fill in when Joe Mixon give him a breath of fresh air if he gets injured or gets hurt or whatever like that. So I just think it's a solid draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm going to give it a B+.
B+ for Robert. I'm going to give it a B, just straight up. Love the first part of the draft. Second part, I think you're taking some swings, but I'm going to give that a B for the Bengals. All right, let's go to the Cleveland Browns, the host city, Cleveland, Ohio of this draft. You started out. Now, this is an unusual draft for the Browns because there's no screaming holes on the roster where there's usually been in the past, and you're kind of drafting for, well, we can improve this position or add depth at this position, and that's kind of the way this draft was setting up. And I think that Cleveland really nailed it across the board here. They go with Greg Newsome in round 1 out of Northwestern, the cornerback. That Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah falls to them from Notre Dame in the second round. Anthony Schwartz in round 3 out of Auburn. A little bit of a reach for me, but I understand the pick. The speed is there, elite speed. James Hudson, the tackle out of Cincinnati. Tommy Togiai out of Ohio State in round 4 as well. Round 5, 2 picks. Tony Fields, linebacker from West Virginia, Arizona transfer, fast guy, really, really solid player. Richard LeCounte suffered a leg injury this year. I thought he was one of the best players on the Georgia defense over the last several years on a defense that's had a lot of NFL talent. He stands out. And Demetric Felton out of UCLA in round 6. Fellas, I'm going to give this draft. It's hard. I say I don't like doing A+, but I'm going to give this an A because I don't want to do an A+ because there's probably not a perfect draft, but I'm giving this a solid A because you added depth, you added more talent. The defense is better, the offense is better with this draft. I like the picks across the board. I thought the last 4 picks in particular, Togiai, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, Fields, LeCount, and Felton. I think all those guys can contribute from day one on some level. So I think this was a really deep draft, really solid players. You're taking some chances on Schwartz and Hudson, I feel like. But other than that, I feel like really solid value at everywhere you're picking, and these can all be contributors very early on in their careers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Nick. I'm not going to give it an A, mainly because of the reach with Anthony Schwartz in the third round. But just like you said, I understand it. He's a speed guy. He's a track guy. He really didn't get a chance to shine out in Auburn because of the quarterback play. But if he can kind of put it together and be consistent, oh man, he can be a weapon moving forward for this Cleveland Browns team. But the thing that I'm worried about is, him actually outrunning Baker Mayfield's arm. That might be an issue right there. But other than that, I mean, that goes to show you that Odell Beckham is on notice right now. They drafted Donovan Peoples-Jones last year in the 6th round. He was a late guy. He kind of came on later on in the year. And then, you have the 2 tight end set that they actually brought over. What's his name? I can't remember the guy from Atlanta. The tight end
from Atlanta.
Hooper.
Yep.
Hooper.
Yep, Austin Hooper. So with that being said, I think you have Jarvis Landry, which is not really a speed guy. He's more of a possession, slot guy. And you still have him. I think this Cleveland Browns team did everything that they needed to do to kind of compete. That defense is going to be really ridiculous this year, especially with the trade up to kind of get the guy from Notre Dame, the defensive end from Notre Dame that kind of slipped a little bit. But overall, I love this draft from the Cleveland Browns. I'm giving it a B+. And, they get Tony Fields, they address the linebacker need. They couldn't really cover nothing last year from the linebacker standpoint. And they kind of get Tony Fields, who's a smaller linebacker guy, but kind of can cover those running backs and those tight ends coming out the backfield. So I really like this Cleveland Browns draft. So I'm going to give it a B+.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Robert, on most of these guys. Greg Newsom was a nice, addition to a secondary that's been burned, religiously the past 2 years. So to get some free agent help and then to add a guy like him, it was really solid where they might have a solid 3-4 corner rotation for a change. Getting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the 2nd could be one of the steals of the draft. He's that guy who should be covering running backs, out of the slot, wide receivers out of the slot. I worry about his size a little bit, only to just a small extent. Honestly, I think he'd do a little better as more of an in the box strong safety, kind of exclusive nickel type of guy. I just wouldn't want him in there on rundowns. I feel like they've got some decent rundown guys. He'll play, don't get me wrong, but just got littler linebackers have had trouble holding up long term, just having longer NFL careers. So one concern there. I actually love the Anthony Schwartz here pick. I really thought, I know Pittsburgh was really interested in him, probably not this early. But when you look at this guy on tape, yeah, he's got just incredible speed, but he's actually a hands catcher. He does not let stuff get into his body. He actually catches with his hands. He's a strong hands catcher. You see him track the ball really well. And that's a really underrated element that I think people kind of overlooked in his game. I think he could end up being a real stud. Maybe not quite like that Tyreek Hill guy, but like a Tyreek Hill 1.5 or something, not quite ridiculously as shifty, but I mean, his speed is just as good, long, fast speed, just as good. Big fan of James Hudson. He's got a real nasty streak to him. I think he can play all 5 spots. I think his future, especially in Cleveland, since they already have their left tackle of the future, is going to be at guard. I think he's going to be able to come in or even right tackle. Guard or right tackle. I think he could really be a dominant guard, though, all pro level type guard. Tomi Togiai, what a great pick in the 4th round. He's just that Energizer Bunny defensive tackle that they really could use, come in their rotation. I really like that pick. Tony Fields, I like this pick to a degree. He's a little short, but he runs around. He makes plays. I'm not going to knock him.
He'll be on special teams from day one.
Yeah. He's that guy that's going to be able to play pretty quickly because of that ability. Richard LeCount, if he doesn't get in some dumb dirt bike accident, he probably ends up getting drafted a lot higher. But Cleveland's probably thinking, oh man, this could be a total steal here. Compare him to DeMar Hamlin, who we talked about on a previous episode. He's not like super fast, but he just makes plays. He's like another Ryan Clark, guy who's going to be around the league for a long time because he knows what he's doing. He's got the NFL athleticism to be there, like that pick. And then honestly, I'm surprised Demetric Felton lasted this long to round 6. This is a guy who played running back this year, who's making a switch to wide receiver. And he looked very good to Senior Bowl, getting separation, catching the ball, doing routes really good. I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential here. And typically these guys are the type of guys that like go in rounds 3 and 4, not like guys that fall all the way to round 6. So that's a phenomenal selection that late. That's why I'm giving them a B+ as well. There's just a lot of high upside here from a lot of these guys to actually fill out a roster for a change rather than come in and, oh, for the love of God, we need you to be able to play today, day one. Oh my God, we're so bad, we need help. No, this group will be able to come in, help the guys that are there. I mean, I do think you have multiple potential starters. I think Hudson, Owusu-Koramoah, Knudsen will all be starters eventually. So, I mean, good draft class, Cleveland. Good job.
All right, we're gonna save Jeremy's thoughts on the Steelers for last here, but I'm gonna go through it. So, Rob, you're gonna be next here. I know Jeremy's gonna try to jump in, but I just want to say that ahead of time because I know he'll get excited. But you'll take us home with the Steelers. So I'll quickly run through Najee Harris, Alabama, at number 24, the running back. Pat Freiermuth from Penn State at tight end, Baby Gronk. Kendrick Green from Illinois. Dan Moore, the tackle from Texas A&M in the 4th round. Another 4th-round pick, linebacker Buddy Johnson out of Texas A&M. Isaiah Loudermilk out of Wisconsin, interior defensive lineman. Edge rusher Quincy Roche out of Miami, Temple transfer. Trey Norwood, the safety from Oklahoma, in round 7. And Presley Harvin, big boy punter out of Georgia. Georgia Tech. I'm sorry, Georgia Tech. No offense, Georgia Tech. Sorry, Georgia Tech. So, running through it real quick. Love Najee, one of the most NFL-ready players in this draft. He's going to fit right in from day one. If you're a fantasy football player, that's your rookie to go after for sure. Pat Freiermuth, for whatever reason, Ben just doesn't love the tight end position to throw to, but I think this guy will step in and he should have an impact as a rookie somewhat. Kendrick Green, really solid prospect out of Illinois. Dan Moore Jr., Senior Bowl guy out of Texas A&M, did pretty well down there in Mobile. Buddy Johnson just flies around. It's good, another solid Aggie right there. Big guy out of Wisconsin, has some development to do, but just the size is unbelievable with Loudermilk. And Roche, he was good at Miami, but I think he a little better. He was an American, AAC, the American Athletic Conference Player of the Year on defense a couple years ago. And Norwood, just solid player. And I mean, Harvin, when you get a punter that looks like your average fan in the stands for the Steelers, it's going to be a popular pick. So, what do you think about the Steelers, Rob? I'm going to give them overall. I think they address a lot of needs overall, but I worry with like some of these picks. Like I think you got some high end potential with some of these guys, but I think it's just like a lot of like fastballs down the middle. But that high end guy, you might have Najee Harris on that, be that real high end guy in the league. So for that reason, I'm going to just go with a solid B. It's better than a B-, but I'm not quite at the B+ range with it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Nick. I'm going to give it a B, but at the end of the day, I think, the Najee Harris pick, that puts, Pittsburgh right back into the thick of things. One thing that they was missing last year is the running game. And I think Najee Harris resembles Le'Veon Bell more than any other running back in this draft. He can catch out the backfield. He's a patient runner. He can bounce it to the outside. He can run with physicality. He's probably one of the most complete backs that was coming out this year, and the Steelers actually addressed that need at the running back position by grabbing him. So I love that pick. And then they follow that up with Baby Gronk, just like you mentioned earlier, in a pass catching tight end, but not only a pass catching tight end that can split out, he can inline block, and he's probably one of the best tight end blockers from the tight end position within this draft. So I love that pick. And Kendrick Green, I think he's going to be a solid center. Maybe if you don't want to play him at center, he can play guard. But, that was a position of need that the Pittsburgh Steelers addressed. And then they followed that up with taking Dan Moore, another offensive tackle as well. So they addressed the need on the offensive line, and they got Buddy Johnson. They lost Bud Dupree, which was a big staple in their defense or whatever. So maybe Buddy Johnson can kind of be in that, pass rusher mentality, or that linebacker that kind of run around and make plays or whatever. And then Isaiah Loudermilk, I really didn't like his tape, from a scheme fit type of thing, but he's a big guy. He resembles this pick because of his size and what you think you can do with him within a scheme. And then Quincy Roche, I know he kind of slid a little bit. It was some, mention of him getting drafted higher in the football communities out there, early in the year. But I think he can be a solid guy that you don't have to come in and play right away, but he can kind of develop. If TJ Watt can kind of groom him and show him the ropes of things and how, show him the Steelers way, I think he can kind of be a transcendent piece moving forward. So I really like the Steelers draft. They addressed their need at the running back position. They addressed their need at the offensive line, and they got to kind of develop mental pieces that can probably be potential, starters moving forward. So I'm going to give it a solid B on this one.
And you got a punter who's going to sell jerseys, Jeremy.
Yep. The punter will sell some jerseys. I really liked what Pittsburgh did this year. As a fan, kind of anxious, kind of just to see how this draft was going to unfold, because there were quite a few needs. It was just like, where are we going to find guys to fit all these needs? Najee Harris, I knew he was going to be the first round pick. I think the whole NFL knew, if he did not get taken before Pittsburgh, that he was going to be a first round pick. Mm-hmm. Complete total back, pass protection, can catch, can run, patient, sees the holes. He can hurdle. Boy, can he hurdle?
Got the Rose Bowl against Notre Dame.
Yeah, he hurdled a lot of people. Just impressive athlete. We wish he was a little faster, but that's really nitpicking. That was the only thing. I thought Matt Canada might prefer a faster back in this draft class, like an ETN, but I think Harris was just too good of a guy to pass on. And initially, I did not like this Pat Freiermuth pick, because we really needed to find a center, and there were centers still on the board. There were still some left tackles on the board, but then we ended up getting Kendrick Green and Dan Moore in the next two picks. So I'm really coming around on this Pat Freiermuth pick. Pittsburgh is one of those teams that really values the inline tight end. It's in their DNA. It's what they want to do. And then honestly, you said Big Ben doesn't like to throw the tight ends, but he had not a Hall of Famer, but a Steelers Hall of Famer, and Heath Miller, that will go down. He has the most catches in Pittsburgh history, believe it or not.
Wow.
So he was a great weapon for Big Ben. And then Ebron has caught almost.
Ebron did have a good year.
Ebron had a great year. He's almost caught 100 balls in the 2 years that he's been with Pittsburgh now. So, when there's a playmaker at tight end, he doesn't mind it. He's going to love the size that Pat Freiermuth brings to the field. He loves throwing tall and letting these guys go attack the ball. Kendrick Green might end up being the best center in this draft class, and I truly mean that. He has got some special athleticism to get out and get in front of blockers. He's only 6'2", or like 6'2", 6'3", 305 pounds or whatever, but his movement skills are unbelievable, and that's one thing Pittsburgh requires out of their center. They have had some great centers. Dermontti Dawson will be a Hall of Famer, super athletic. Marquise Pouncey could end up being a Hall of Famer someday, super athletic. They value those athletic centers. They were able to wait all the way, till the end of round 3 practically to get a guy who they think will probably come in and start right away, in all honesty. Dan Moore Jr. was a nice pick. I had him a little lower on my board, but he fits what the Steelers need in that left tackle. He's big, he's tall, he's athletic, he can run block, really moves well, really athletic guy. Buddy Johnson was actually the one pick I really didn't like. I see him more as like this 2-down linebacker. And again, I said it on an earlier episode, I don't like spending, like kind of premium picks on 2-down linebackers. They probably see him as a little more. I think his change of direction skills will kind of get exposed in the NFL against when he has to really have to match up. The Isaiah Loudermilk pick really threw me because we traded a 4th-round pick next year for the 5th-round pick this year to get Loudermilk. And honestly, I thought defensive line was a position we were going to kind of avoid this draft class because we have some solid depth here and there. But I mean, he's tall. He's very much what we like at our defensive ends, like out of Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt, just big guys who are powerful and really move well. We did need some depth there. So he's a scheme fit. I don't really like trading the round 4 pick, but they said they did that because they're anticipating multiple compensation picks in rounds 3 and 4 next year. So they felt they had some ability to move around there. Quincy Roche is a guy I really like, has a great first step. He could be bigger, but he bends really well too. He's going to give he's a real athletic guy at defensive end. So I really like him. He can really stunt. When I watched him, he can really stunt and get after the pass rush. So, I mean, he can be a guy I think that can probably come in and play fairly quickly. I don't know how much they're going to trust him initially, but he's a guy that I like. Trey Norwood, I like him. I think he's going to come in and kind of play our nickel a lot. I don't really see him sticking completely at boundary. I see him as more as a safety. But again, just kind of a solid defensive back. Doesn't wow you. He's gotten his hands on the ball, though. So, I mean, he shows he can make some playmakers. And then the fan favorite, big man Presley Harvin, the third. Boy, I'm not going to lie. I didn't do much work on punters this year, but, I mean, he won the punting award. I'm forgetting the name of it or whatever. He's actually the Ray guy. Thank you. Believe it or not, I think he's actually the first African-American to win that award. That's something he really was proud of doing. And, he said he doesn't want to be the only one. He wants to be the gateway for, to open it up for more guys. So I thought that was really cool. But, I mean, he was booming punts this year. I mean, like his 4-year average is like 47 point something and was booming punts like over 50 yards this year. I mean, and then the other thing is, believe it or not, he's got some hecker to his game too. He can throw the ball around a little bit. He's not just this big guy who can't run. He's actually fairly athletic. He actually worked out with the defense at the end of the day. Georgia Tech made all their specialists work out and tackle at the end of the day. So he's not like immune to coming down and like hitting someone. And, he's already said he's lost some of that baby weight that everyone kind of gives him shit for. But I think he'll be a fan favorite right away. Pittsburgh's really needed an upgrade in the punting department, and it's just kind of been something they have not really addressed, I was actually thrilled to see that Pittsburgh used their last pick on a punter for a change. I'm a big fan of taking a punter with your last pick if there's someone you really like. So I was actually really thrilled with this. So overall, I will give this a solid B. I think we did a really good job on hitting some needs. Like I said, wasn't a big fan of Buddy Johnson. He should come in the league, be a very good special teamer, could end up being a 2-down starter if needed, kind of a Vince Williams replacement type deal. I didn't like trading the 4th-round pick for Loudermilk, but I understand what they're doing there. So I'm going to go with a B. We ended up doing what we like to do, just kind of wait and take the best player available. We didn't force the needs for offensive linemen, which is what was killing me early in the process, but I like who they ended up getting. So solid B.
So B's across the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers, guys. All right. It's been another episode of American Football Stories. This was the AFC North grades and draft analysis. We're going to send it out with a word from our sponsor, Coach Paint.
American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tell a straight video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter, at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.